Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna, we're studying from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, entitled Answers by Said the Lord's Version. We're on text 26. Text 26, Chapter 9, Canto 2. Rainam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim sarasvatim yasam tato jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supremose human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva bhadreshu nicham bhagavata sevaya bhagavat utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. So text 26, chapter 9, canto 2, Srimad Bhagavatam. Tata api
Tatapi
natamanasya
Natamanasya
nata
Nata
nataya
Nataya
natitam
Natitam
para avare
Avari
yata
Ta
rupe
Rupe
janiyam
Shaniyam
he
Te
chu
Chu
arupina
Rupina
tatapina tamanasya
Tapi Natamanasya
natanataya natitam
Natanataya Natitam
paravare yatarupe
Alavage Yatarupe
janiyam te tvarupina
Janiyam Te Tvarupina
tatapina tamanasya
Tatapi Natamanasya
natanataya natitam
Natanataya Natitam
paravare yatarupe
Alavage Yatarupe
janiyam te tvarupina
Janiyam Te Tvarupina
tatapina tamanasya
Tapi Natamanasya
natanataya natitam
Natanataya Natitam
paravare yatarupe
Bhavake Yatarupe
janiyam te tvarupina
Janiyam Te Tvarupina Tatapi Natamanasya
tatapina tamanasya
Natanataya Natitam
natanataya natitam
Bhagavate Yatarupe
paravare yatarupe
Janiyam Te Tvarupina
aniyam te tvarupina.
Tatapi natamaya nasha
Tatapina tamanasya
natanataya natitam
natanataya natitam
paravare yatarupe
paravare yatarupe
janiyam te tvarupina.
janiyam te tvarupina. Okay, we'll go to the word for word, text 26, chapter 9, canto 2. Tata api,
Tata Api
in spite of that.
in spite of that.
Nata manasya,
Natamanasya,
of the one who is asking for.
of the one who is asking for.
Nata,
Nata,
O Lord.
O Lord.
Nataya,
Nataya,
please award.
please award.
Natitam,
Natitam,
as it is desired.
as it is desired.
Para avare,
Para avari,
in the matter of mundane and transcendental.
in the matter of mundane and transcendental.
Yata,
Yata,
as it is.
as it is.
Rupe,
Will be
in the form.
in the form.
Janiyam,
Janiyam,
may it be known.
may it be known.
Te,
Te,
your,
your,
two,
two,
but.
but.
Arupina,
Ahubina,
one who is formless.
one who is formless.
Translation, this is Lord Brahma speaking. In spite of that, my Lord, I am praying to you to kindly fulfill my desire. May I please be informed how, in spite of your transcendental form, you assume the mundane form, although you have no such form at all. There's no purport there, so I'll read text 27. Yatatma maya yogena nana shakyupa brimhitam vilumpan visrijan grinan bibrat atmanam atmana. And please inform me how you, by your own self, manifest different energies for annihilation, generation, acceptance, and maintenance by combination and permutation. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The whole manifestation is the Lord Himself by diffusion of His different energies only, namely the internal, external, and marginal, just as the sunlight is the manifestation of the energy of the sun planet. Such energy is simultaneously one with and different from the sun planet. The energies are acting by combination and permutation by the indication of the Lord. And the acting agents like Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are also different incarnations of the Lord. In other words, there is nothing but the Lord, and still the Lord is different from all such manifested activities. How it is so will be explained later on. Om Gyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Anmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamrupa Kadamayam Tadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatan Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhiracha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namini. Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, text 26 and 27. Tatapi natamanasya natanataya natitam paravare yatarupe janiyam te farupina. In spite of that, my Lord, I am praying to you to kindly fulfill my desire. May I please be informed how, in spite of your transcendental form, you assume the mundane form, although you have no such form at all. Yatatma maya yogena nana shakt yupabrim hitam dilum pandisrijan greenan bibrad atmanam atmana. And please inform me how you, by your own self, manifest different energies for annihilation, generation, acceptance, and maintenance by combination and permutation. Hare Krishna. All right, so here in text 26, Brahma is commenting on Krishna's form. So just as well, we commonly say, Namo Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purnasharu Nityamukto Pinatvan Naminamina. There's no distinction between Krishna and Krishna's name, between God and God's names. That's what absolute means. And Prabhupada often gives the example that here in this world, like if we're thirsty and we chant water, 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 we'll still be thirsty because there's a difference between the name and the substance or essence. But that's why whatever we understand or not, we chant God's names, in any of God's names in any language. We chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And we as the spirit soul feels fulfilled because we're associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So similarly, there's no difference between Krishna's name and Krishna, and there's no difference between Krishna's form and Krishna. So it's the same principle applied to the form. And so Brahma is saying, like, yeah, like you appear to have a form like me and you and us and people we know, but although you have no such form at all. So this is just a very cornerstone of Vaishnava philosophy. Just as the name is a cornerstone, a foundation, a pillar, so is the form of Krishna. Krishna says in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Ajopisana vyayatma bhutanam mishrot pisam prakritim svam adhishtaya sambhavam yatmamayaya. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates and I am the Lord of all living entities, still I appear millennium after millennium. So that's the distinction between like ourselves. We're forced to take birth by the modes of nature. Krishna says, I'm unborn, yet I appear. And later in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Avajananti mamuda manushim tanum ashrita param bhavam ajananto mamabhuta maheshram. Krishna says, when I do appear, fools deride me. When I appear in this human-like form, not understanding my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all that be, over all living entities. At the beginning of the Old Testament of the Bible, the Hebrew is B'Tselem Elohim. So it's not that some sort of anthropomorphic thing that we imagine for. No, but actually we say God can appear in a human-like form. That like the human-like form that we are created in the image of God, the image of God. First, this is the mundane version. And Brahma uses that term, the mundane appearance. So Krishna is saying, but actually my form's transcendental, just as my name's transcendental. So just as hearing the name of God purifies our existence, looking at the forms, the revealed forms, the revealed forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his personalities, his flute, he's non-different from his form, he's non-different from his clothing, his weapons, his jewelry, his ornaments. Okay, that's what absolute means. Yeah, so it's just okay. Like in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's the pastime with Bhishma Dev, right? 9th chapter of the first canto. Well, it's Mahabharat stuff. And Bhishma Dev was taking Bhishma Dev was fighting. That was his rasa with Krishna, fighting rasa. Like the gopis have romance ras, and the cowherd boys have friendship ras, and whether Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, and Devaki, they have parental ras, vatsalya. Yes. That Yam Koda Kama, Nichaya, but Vatsalya Moha, Gurava Sevya Bhave, all these different rasas. Sanchintiyasya Sadrishim Tanama Parete Govinda Mari Pusham Tamaham Bhajami. That okay, so Bhishma Dev is in the fighting ras, and so in that pastime, so Krishna is wounded by Bhishma Dev's arrows. Okay, so he said, oh well, son, he's just like I would get wounded if I'm cut. Well, that's it. I'm thinking I'm this body, and this body made of flesh and bone. So that's what pastime means. Pastime means that Krishna's transcendental body. It's just like if we have an actor on a stage or in a movie, and the actor's in a battle scene, and the actor's all okay, and the character is all bloody, and it's very real. But okay, if we have a little distance, we know actually the actor, John Smith or whatever, the actor is actually not very harmed, but he's doing this fabulous job of acting, and with the special effects, he's not really harmed. So it's similar that through Krishna's Maya energy, he made either Yoga Maya or Mahamaya, that Yoga Maya is the force of illusion that brings one closer to self-realization and love of Krishna. Mahamaya is the force of illusion that alienates us further from God and self-realization. So Krishna makes it appear to us that he's wounded by arrows, but actually his transcendental body never deteriorates. It's not subject to disease or injury or wounds, but he makes it appear that way. Okay, that's the Bhishma Dev pastime. I'm thinking, okay, then there's like, in the 10th canto, in Krishna book, there's the pastime with Rukmini. Okay, so what, like somewhere towards the end of the 10th canto, so Rukmini's talking to some other ladies. And this is a pastime where she's feeling very fortunate and blessed because Krishna is her husband. And she's describing like any other man or husband, they've got, they're just a collection of mucus, bile, stool, and mustaches, and pus, and skin, and blood, and bones. She's like any other man like that. So it could sound like she's just like kind of being harsh about men there. But really, she's talking about all material nature, all material bodies. It can sound like she's just kind of being critical about men, because she's talking about husbands and things. But she's talking about all material bodies, all material nations. So that it's made of this gross stuff. So what Rukmini is really doing there in her description to her lady friends, she's really glorifying and expressing realization about the transcendental nature of Krishna's body, the transcendental nature of Krishna's body. In Brahma Samhita, more verses by Lord Brahma. Angani yasya sakalendriya vittimanti Pashanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sarujvala Vigrahasya Govindamadi Bhujam Tamaham Bhajami. So Krishna, that's a verse we sing every morning, Govindam prayers. It's a verse about Krishna's body. And that Krishna's body, it's made of cognizance and bliss and eternality and self-luminosity. That's what it's made of. And we can, with a little introspection, we can see, oh, yeah, this body, my body is not made of self-luminosity and eternality and cognizance and bliss. So it's a body of a different quality. And that's what Brahmaji, that's what Lord Brahma is getting at here. That Krishna's body is the body of God is of a whole different quality. And so Janmad Yasya Yataha, it's a basic logical principle, which means what exists in the effect must exist in the source. So we have form. And the principle is we also have an eternal, blissful, fully cognizant spiritual body, and we reveal it. It gets uncovered as we practice this process of bhakti yoga. Okay. So in this kind of like in this shadow temporary world, relative world, there's form. And just like the shadow of an object exists because of the source is the object itself. So this is like shadow form, shadow name, shadow sound vibration. So yeah, so just like, okay, I can see on the terrazzo floor the shadow of the chair. So it means, oh, there must be a real chair with actual form. The shadow has, some amorphous, some indication of form. So this is like the shadow form. And we also have a such Chidananda Vigraha, eternally full of bliss and knowledge form. And that Atashri Krishna Namani Nambhavet Graimindriya Sevid Mukhi Jivida Svaimeva Spratyada. And that gets uncovered, revealed as we cleanse the dust, Cheto Darpan Marjanam Bhava Mahadabhagni Nirvaptam from the mirror of the heart and the mind through observing ourselves in the form of the Supreme and through chanting the holy names. So so Brahma is talking about transcendental form and mundane form. In the next text, text 27, he goes on to, and please inform me how you, by your own self, manifest different energies for annihilation, generation, acceptance, and maintenance by combination and permutation. And of course, these verses lead in just a few verses. We're going to get to the seed, what Prabhupada calls the nutshell seed verses of the Bhagavatam, the 4 seed verses that's coming up. And so that's the Bhagavatam. It's about the source, Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, and all the expansions, all the energies. That's the topics of Bhagavatam. So in the purport, Prabhupada gives what's a well-known analogy for one who studies Prabhupada's books or the Vedas about the sun and the sun rays. Narada Muni, in his teachings to the Prachetas towards the end of the 4th canto of Bhagavatam, gives that analogy, and it's such a ideal metaphor to indicate the oneness and differences. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Maya tatamidam sarvam jagad avyakta murtina matstani sarvabhutani nachaham teshvavastita. As Krishna says, that, it's the Achintya Beda Beda Tattva philosophy. For me, it's a reference point to assess any philosophical approach. Some approaches, maybe they emphasize or overemphasize the oneness. Yes, I am you and you are me, and we're all the one energy, we're all God. Well, there's a truth to that. Okay. And there's a truth to that. So like, yeah, we just like the sun rays, they're like the sun globe, just like they're both one ray has heat like the sun globe, but they're quite different in quantity. that one ray of sunlight illuminates and is illuminating, just like the sun globe, but again, different in intensity and quantity. So similarly, yeah, so we have similarities to God, and we're not completely the same. We're not exactly the same, and we're not completely different. And then some philosophies stress the difference. Either there is no source, there is no absolute, or if there is, God is so far away that it's nothing to do with us. No, we're not completely different. We're not exactly the same. So this Bhagavatam gives us nuanced understanding and realization of how we're one with and different from Source and the Supreme. And so sometimes in different genuine spiritual literatures, including the Vedas, it's described about the Supreme, the Source, God, Brahman, has no form, no name, no energies. That's described. No variety. That's described, and there's truth, because that's when the Supreme God, just look, God is the supreme educator, just like a good conscious educator knows that, oh, this student will respond well to visual stimuli. This student will respond well if I just sort of like touch his hand and make eye contact, and he'll absorb a lot that way. And this student will respond well if I get his body moving in dance or something like that. So we can think that the Supreme Personality would be the supreme educator. So he communicates truth to different peoples at different times according to where we're at. It's the empathy principle, meeting us where we're at. Just like someone dedicated to share math, he or she might be meeting the second grader where they're at and give addition and subtraction and multiplication. And then, oh, okay, now I'm talking to a calculus student in university. I'll share about how to calculate the area under the curve and get the differential, and like that. So in this way, God, our Source, meets us where we're at. And just like with the math teacher, the goal is always the same. The details, the form might be different. The goal is always the same. From wherever you're at, to deepen and increase your knowledge of math and your enthusiasm to learn math more. So similarly, God's meeting us where we're at, and the goal is always the same: to increase, to enhance our progress in self-realization towards love of God, towards pure devotional service. Bhakti is the goal of all the paths. So sometimes, because there are some paths for people who are for people who are inclined towards a jnana approach, what we can find in the Vedas and other Shastra, where it emphasizes, yes, you might say it's a path of negation. And there's truth to. God has no material form. God has no material name. God has no material activities. So that's true. And it'll emphasize that for those who are ready to embrace that. And that can be helpful to help one detach from material form, material sound vibration, material activities. Okay, so it's kind of like an approach of negation. And then bhakti is an approach of affirmation. It's an approach of affirmation. Like, we already said that. Yeah, God has no material form, and God has spiritual transcendental form. Yes, God has no material name, and God has Nam Namakri Bodhanijasar Shaktista Chargatanyamita Smayani Nakla. God has unlimited spiritual names that are purifying when we chant. God has no material form, he has spiritual form. So the path of bhakti, it's a path of affirmation. Yeah, here's affirming the qualities of the absolute. And in the path of affirmation, the conception, the understanding of what's negated is automatic. It's automatic. Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Projita Janayat Yashuvairagyam Gyanam Chayad Hetukam. That by engaging in service to Vasudev, then automatically one gets detachment from matter. The goal of the jnanis or yogis, automatically one is filled with transcendental knowledge, transcendent to mundane knowledge. So that verse from the Bhagavatam, first canto, it starts Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita. So Vasudev is a name for Krishna. One meaning of Vasudev is son of Vasudeva, right? Because Krishna, he didn't take birth, but he appeared. Actually, it's described in the Bhagavatam. Vasudeva initiated Devaki with transcendental knowledge, and he transferred Krishna from his own mind into Devaki, and then Krishna appeared from Devaki. But it's just like we can if we're outside at 6:30 a.m. you can say, oh, the sun is taking birth from the eastern horizon. The sun is taking birth from the eastern horizon. So it appears that way. Just like we talked about Krishna, his body appears to be injured by the arrows of Bhishma Dev. But so it appears, but actually the sun is much greater than the eastern horizon of this planet. But to our eyes, it looks like those. Similarly, Krishna appears to take birth from the womb of Mother Devaki, like that. But he's appeared. It's not like our birth and activities. Janma Krama Jame Divyam Evam Yogati Tatfata Chakvadayam Punarjama Netimam Neti Sarjuna. So these are very key subject matters. And Krishna says that we gain some realization about these subject matters of the actual nature of his transcendental appearance, activities, and disappearance, and then we go back home, back to Godhead. We're not forced to take another material birth. Ihayasya harirasya karmana manasagira nikila svapi vastasu jivan mukta sauchyate, and we're experiencing Goloka Vrindavan in Vaikuntha, that place without anxiety, even while within this body, in that spirit of the spontaneous play of devotional service to Sri Krishna. So Vasudev means the all-pervading person, right? So to our mundane experience, so this is a transcognitive concept, a trans-phenomenal concept. Because we think, well, I'm a person and I'm here sitting in this room in a spot, and you're a person sitting in a spot, like that. So God is a person. Sure, God is a person. We're persons. So how can we deny personhood to the Supreme? And the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a trans-phenomenal, trans-empirical, transcendental person who is Vasudeva, a person who exists everywhere, a person who exists everywhere. And so, because sometimes it can be thought, because I'm not seeing the personality of Godhead, therefore such a personality doesn't exist. Well, that points to my limitation to understand my limitation of my own mind and senses. Or we can think, oh, well, Brahma is seeing the form of the personality of Godhead. That means that the form of Krishna or Vishnu is just like mine. Well, that's not true either. We gave the example of Rukmini's description of the difference between the forms of other men, husbands, or any living entities, and the form of Krishna. We gave the Bhishma Dev example. No, that's not true either. So Vasudeva, Vas means life. So living form that exists everywhere. And Dantarasta, Pramano Charantarastam, even within each atom. Sarvasya Chamridi Sanivista, and also within the heart of all living entities, within the heart of all living entities. So Krishna has so many energies, often categorized as three. I mean, there's infinite energies, sometimes categorized as three: material, or Bahiranga Shakti, internal, spiritual, Antaranga Shakti, and marginal, Tatastha Shakti. So Jiva, spirit, soul, that's us. We're Tatastha Shakti. We're like the beach. The beach can sometimes be covered by water, and sometimes it's land. And so we're safe on the dry land when we take shelter of this process of hearing and chanting Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we're talking here about the oneness and difference between us, the individual personal spirit soul, and the personality of Godhead. And we can say that so the difference is always there, but the difference, it's not a wall. It's not like it could be a wall if we're dedicated to forgetfulness of who we are, spirit, soul, Jiva, Srupa Hoy, Krishnara, Nichidas, eternal servants of Krishna. But so you might say the bridge to bridge that separation, that's loving devotional service. Not just love as a feeling, but like if I'm really loving someone, then I'm serving them. I really want to serve them. Of course, in the material conception of love, it becomes service to illusion, and oftentimes the love relationships become hate relationships, things like that. Actually, yeah. So I was coaching a couple recently, and she shared with me that, well, they have a lot of affection, but she shared that sometimes they go on with both partners call it hate walks. They go on hate walks, and because they just get so angry and resentful with each other, and they go on walks and they'll just shout at each other. All this resentment's coming out, and they shout, and then afterwards they're holding hands and they're affectionate again. But so oftentimes that's, material relationships can be like that. Of course, everything that exists, even the anger, and even we talked about the fighting spirit, the fierce Kshatriya fighting spirit, that exists in its pure form in transcendental relationships. So the bridge is bhakti. And this is the science of Godhead, Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the science of how to not have walls up with our truths, not to be envious of our own self, and to gradually cleanse our heart of envy of other living entities, envy of Krishna. And the Vedas describe that the stubborn resistance against bhakti, devotional service, it's what we're being envious of ourselves, like it's self-sabotage. We're hating we're hating the soul, right? We're self-sabotaging ourselves. So bhakti is the bridge. Now, it doesn't mean that if we engage in bhakti, then we become Krishna. Again, we're never completely the same as God. We're never exactly the same, and at the same time, we're not completely different. And so Prabhupada often emphasizes, it's actually, we're never disconnected from Krishna. We might forget that we're connected. We're never disconnected. We forget that we're connected. And so morning programs like this is opportunity for us to awaken from the dream, to awaken from the forgetfulness. Okay. So bhakti is the bridge to bridge that separation with loving devotion. And generally speaking, in the early stages, and early stages can be many, many decades or lifetimes. So we might I'm not feeling the love. And that's why we sadhana bhakti means we're practicing. It means we're practicing. And then gradually it becomes more and more natural and spontaneous as we practice. And that can go for any field of endeavor, right? If we're teaching communication, I was like, oh, okay, so avoid roadblocks, and then kind of repeat back in my own words what someone else said and the feeling behind it. I feel so awkward. Yeah, it might feel awkward. And then, oh, I'm practicing it. And this is really enhancing understanding. And now, wow, I've done it like 10 times after a week. Yeah, this is becoming more and more natural. This empathic listening, or riding a bike, or playing a piano. At first we might, yes, we might practice rigorously for hours what the teacher says, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, di, like that. We might practice, and then gradually it becomes very natural. And then the world-class virtuosos in piano, like we don't even notice their training. They might be doing things that apparently are wrong compared to the training I learned and the keys. But wow, they're just spontaneously creating this amazing music. And it's not because they don't even know the fundamentals. No, they've mastered the fundamentals, and now they're naturally they're expressing their own spontaneous voice. Yes. An example from my youth, I remember my father would teach me how to play tennis and like to hit a forehand. There were so many things. Keep the ball in front of you, turn sideways, left foot in front, back swing, and make sure your wrist, and so many things. And then I would watch on TV, I would watch Bjorn Borg. And Bjorn Borg, he didn't know how to hit a forehand. He did like so many things wrong. He had too much topspin, and his footwork, it just so many things wrong. But he won Wimbledon 5 times and the French Open 6 times. So maybe he knows something. So it's not that Bjorn Borg needed to take lessons from my dad. No, that's not the conclusion. No, Bjorn Borg, he was a master of the fundamentals. He was a master of the foundation. And on that, he developed his own stuff. Now, so it's the same in Bhakti Yoga, right? And same in Bhakti Yoga, to become rigorous master of the foundation by rigorous practice of the regulative principles of freedom. And especially discussed yesterday when in some of the conversation yesterday, that after Gajendra commented yesterday after class, I said, when Prabhupada said, as years went on, he said he's surprised anyone agreed to follow any regular principles. He just thought maybe a few people will chant. So essentially the mood is, it's positive. It's not about thou shalt not this, thou shalt not that. It's a focus on chanting, dancing, feasting. This, just like we talked about Vasudev, it's the all-pervading personality. So similarly, like in this chanting, it's not like a mundane thing. Like my mouth is creating the words Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. No, this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the names of the Supreme, the names of the Divine, these transcendental vibrations they're all pervading also. And it's like the mouth and the lips and the tongue, they reveal the names. Just like if it's a dark room and then I have a flashlight and the flashlight reveals, oh, there's the pillows, there's the chair, there's the table. But it's not like the light is the source of the pillows. So we get to be instruments to reveal our own spiritual body, to reveal the transcendental names of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, especially recommended in this age. Shakam Namam, Kali Kama Shanashanam, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This, like chanting any names of God, is wonderful and fully recommended. And this mantra, for different reasons, is especially recommended in this age. So it's like a special avatar. Avatar means one who descends, and that's important. So like Krishna's form that we're hearing from Brahma, it's an avatar. Krishna's form appeared 5,000 years ago. an avatar from the transcendental realm. Janmadhyasya, there's this whole realm of material, right? There's all this material drama going on with these bodies and these relationships and these financial exchanges and these tragedies happening in our lives and throughout the world. There's this whole realm. And so this is just the shadow world. It makes sense that there's a transcendental realm that contains the substance. Like the shadow indicates the substance, but at the same time, we don't really know much about the substance from the shadow. We get to know about how everything's one and different from the Supreme through bhakti, through that bridge of bhakti. So I'll read these texts again. This is Canto 2, Chapter 9, text 26 and 27. Tatapi nata manasya nata nataya natitam paravare yatarupe janiyam te tvarupina. In spite of that, my Lord, I am praying to you to kindly fulfill my desire. May I please be informed how, in spite of your transcendental form, you assume the mundane form, although you have no such form at all. And text 27. Yatatma maya yogena nana shakyu pabrimhitam vilumpan visrijan grinan bibrat atmanam atmana. And please inform me how you, by your own self, manifest different energies for annihilation, generation, acceptance, and maintenance by combination and permutation. Hare Krishna. Thanks for your attention. Damayanti.
Thank you for the class, Hare Krishna. I had kind of a weird question, an idea that came to mind. I was wondering if, and then I typed a question earlier in the class in the chat, and I'll share that after I say this one. If a person chants the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra or does some form of devotional service located in the spiritual world, is that moment, if that moment is spiritual, does that mean that it like goes on forever? Like, you know how in the spiritual world there's, I guess there's no time.
Yeah.
So each moment is going on forever or something like that. So is that true for spiritual activities in the material world? Those moments are going on forever?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. The basic answer is yes. Yeah.
Because I was thinking, therefore, like anyone who does, I mean, I guess, I don't know if it matters that they're doing it in a pure, if they need, I guess I'm thinking anyone who, like, let's say, for example, chants one Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, it's almost like, are they doomed or / destined, you know, are they the fortunate or doomed to, they're definitely returning, like, to the spiritual world one day, you know, like, I don't know how long it'll take, but if they're doing something, if they're decided to do that activity and it sort of lasts forever, it just seems like it would like permeate to be a positive thing for their existence. What do you think?
Okay, I mean, I hear a few things. I hear a few things in your question. Yes, so yeah, so whether it's the form of Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam, yeah, like someone reads one line from Prabhupada's books, here's Hare Krishna, take some prasadam, and that's it. Then their material life is beginning to be finished. Now, and it might, within a year, it might really wind down, maybe a few lifetimes, but they're on that path. So all of these things, the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's form, the pastimes, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, all of this is eternal, and it's just not touched by material time. So when we enter into that with our consciousness, our being, then we are entering eternity. We are entering eternity. And yeah, but it does, but now to the extent that we experience that depends on our consciousness. Because if I'm chanting and at the same time I'm worried about just some petty thing, or just some, you know, my mind's in some material ignorant stuff or some envious stuff or some petty comparison while I'm chanting, okay, then I'm not going to experience that eternity, you know, in its fullness. And the principle the principle is, yeah, that, okay, as we go deeper and deeper into the modes, things become denser. And even like sometimes Prabhupada would give credit to Einstein's idea of relativity. He said like Einstein basically had the right idea. Okay. And Einstein's idea is like as one goes faster, then time slows down. Okay. And yeah. So similarly, as we approach sattva, time slows down. And as we go to pure sattva, to completely pure sattva, then time is conspicuous by its absence. Because like tamas is destruction, rajas is creation. So spiritual, every moment exists forever. There's no rajas or tamas. There's no destruction. There's no creation. Sattva is maintenance. So that's why the highest planet in this world is Brahmaloka, the planet of Brahma. And there it's practically the spiritual world, not quite. But there, so like 1 year for us is equal to 311 trillion, 40 billion years. So it's just like, yeah, right. So our whole lifetime isn't even a fraction of a nanosecond there, because it's just like, it's all sattva. So then time, just everything becomes less dense and more light and more free and devotional, and time practically disappears. And if we cross the Viraj River, where it's to Vaikuntha, Goloka Vrindavan, that area, yeah, then there's no influence of material time. And we enter into Goloka Vrindavan when we chant Hare Krishna, when we engage in devotional service. And so then we are entering into timelessness. As an example, which for me is relevant, just like some of you have experienced a Safatov seminar, or a 3-day seminar, 4-day, 7-day. And we often get the comments. In some of our seminars, we have a ground rule. If you want to take the seminar, while the seminar is in session, no watches. So it's the same principle, because we're endeavoring to create a sattvic atmosphere. Sattvic atmosphere means we're dedicated to consciousness with no escapes, no escapes into drinking or gossip or looking at the watch. That's, it's not forced, it's voluntary. And then people often say after 2 days, 3 days, it's just like, yeah, this is like a timeless atmosphere. So that's the principle. And now, in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Kapila Dev, he describes timeless devotional service. Devotional service is always transcendental and timeless. Now, we can do devotional service transcendentally, and then we're completely experiencing the eternality of devotional service. But we can also do it in the mode of tamas, like I might be chanting or serving the morti or the deities, but maybe I have this grudging mood. It wasn't my turn to make this offering today. It was his turn. It's no fair. Okay, so the service, the activity is still transcendental devotional service, and I'm doing it in tamas, or I could do it in rajas with kind of like, I hope people recognize that I fasted today, and that I'm really a great devotee, and I'll get credit and appreciation. So that's devotional service in rajas, if the fasting is like for an appearance day or like that. Or we can do devotional service in sattva, where it's not like I'm doing it out of love for Prabhupada and Krishna, but I'm really doing it not for some rajasic or tamasic motivation, but I'm doing the service, the chanting, the morning program for my purification and out of compassion for others. And the transcendental devotional service is that spontaneous play of devotional love. I appreciate your question, Damayanti. Hare Krishna. Gajendra Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Interesting things to think about, even if I don't feel I understand them fully. It's really interesting. There's a couple things I sometimes wonder about in my effort to understand, and yeah, I want to express those wonderings and see what your thought is. One thing is is talking about the eternal nature of these different things. So yeah, we can say, you know, Krishna's body or Krishna's pastimes, these are eternal and different from our material aspect, but, you know, the temporary. And when it comes to the devotional service part, one thing I always, you know, appreciated is the eternal nature of it. And Prabhupada uses, like, you know, on that path, there's no loss or diminution. And I look at that in an absolute eternal type of way. And I also look at, sometimes Prabhupada says, like, you know, however much progress you make in this life, in the next life you begin at, and he uses a percent thing, and it seems to advance. As I read it, it's not even exactly like you actually go forward positively, like there's like a gain. I mean, I can't say exactly where, but when I read it, he like upped the percentage.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about how, you know, as things I've read and heard and contemplated, that like Krishna is not static. It's not like Krishna is this quantity as God and he's stuck. But part of the nature that there is growth that exists is Krishna expands, even like the love of Radha and Krishna expands. And I was just sort of pondering, like, yeah, our devotional service seems to have an expansive quantity just by the nature of it being devotional service. And I was kind of connecting that to how, yeah, whatever service you perform in this life, it almost like it expands almost it's almost geared to grow automatically in your next life just by its nature. That's one thing that I pondered. Another thing that was always interested me in Bhagavad Gita, there, you know, Krishna says, like, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings. And Prabhupada, you know, explained that in a sort of, we're spirit's soul, we're not our body, and also in a sense of individual identity. Sort of, you know, we're not all one, but as individuals, we are eternally individuals. And that's how it was presented. But I also sometimes pondered, you know, this is a related to Krishna, a pastime of Krishna. And he didn't just say like, you know, you and you and you as spirit soul exists. He put it in the context of, you know, you kings. Like, I don't know, maybe it just, that's how it came out. But I was looking at the fact that in one sense, yeah, these, you know, people get killed, these kings disappear, they're sort of not with us in the present moment, they're past history. But that there maybe was some indication, sort of more Einstein-like, that it's happening, like it actually is always existing. Like, not just the soul within these king bodies are eternal and individual, but these kings literally always exist. If you follow what I'm saying, I'm just, you know, if you have any comment, but I just want to express some of my ponderings.
Hare Krishna, thanks for sharing. I appreciate your saying, yeah, there are places, or at least one, maybe more, where maybe Prabhupada says, yes, if we complete 1%, then next life we start from 2%.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your perspective. And Well, definitely, it's philosophically true. Anandam buddhi vardhanam. The nature of devotion is just organically expanding. That's its very nature. It's organically expansive. So I like how you connect that with Prabhupada's statements, where he doesn't say, if you do 1%, you'll start from 1%. You'll have 1% in your bank account next life. No, you start from 2%. So I think I like how you tie that into that.
Sounds like a good investment, devotional service.
Sounds like an excellent investment. Let's keep that in mind. And then, yeah, Natvevaham Jatuna Samnatvam Name Janadi Pana Chevana Bhavishimasa Vevayamatak Pram. Krishna says, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be.
Yeah.
So there too, I appreciate your expanded, interesting perspective. We know that it relates to, because the spirit soul never dies. At the same time, another perspective on that verse is, well, what comes to me is, yeah, Krishna's eternal pastimes. Krishna's body is transcendental and eternal, and Krishna's name and his pastimes. So yeah, so like right now, Arjuna and those kings, they're having a Kurukshetra battle in some planet, in some universe somewhere. And so, yeah, Krishna has eternal pastimes in Goloka, in the spiritual world, and he has eternal spiritual pastimes in the material world, including the Kurukshetra pastimes.
Yeah, and I was kind of indicating too, when you sort of mentioned Einstein, and if you're moving at the theoretical speed of light, how like time stops. I was looking at it, yeah, all over the universe, but not just that, but literally that reality, which is sort of past history from our perspective, literally that continues.
Yeah.
That particular history is actually still present in the greater reality, not just a reenactment of it elsewhere.
I'm moved to meditation on that. I appreciate
But it is the Einstein sort of relay, like at the speed of light, that moment, those exact, it continues, and that could be the nature of reality once you get away from the sort of material sub-speed of light, four-dimensional. I'm not really trying to say Einstein's absolute truth, but it is that, relating to something maybe Sadhguru would try to ponder. But yeah, it's interesting stuff.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Gajendra.
Thank you.
Mother Malini.
Hare Krishna. It was actually Brother Ajay. So earlier you mentioned how how in the spiritual world there's neither creation nor destruction.
Yeah.
And how does that fit along with Krishna is constantly expanding, like whatever, I guess I couldn't say later there's more because there's no time, but whatever, like when there's an expansion, there's more of something. And I don't know if I can say before, but before the expansion, that new expandedness wasn't there. So like that, to my mind, seems like there's something being created, like there's more of. So how does this fit with the principle that there's no creation in the spiritual world?
Yeah. Oh, thanks for your question. Well, my understanding, I don't have much realization. So there's no material creation. There is spiritual emanation, spiritual expansion. And the expansion of Krishna and his spiritual energies, that is intrinsic to Krishna's svarup, means like his essential nature, and it's expanding from his essential nature. And so, well, material creation, I guess the way I understand it means like there was a time when it didn't exist. And then we're talking about spiritual expansion. And this is difficult for like my mind, which is within, space, material space time. And so, but that whole realm, it's not touched. It's a different paradigm than material time. And so there's spiritual expansion. Krishna Svarup is Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam. At the same time, it's not like there was a time that it didn't exist, and then it started to exist, because the whole realm is beyond material conceptions of time. So, an example Prabhupada sometimes uses. So like, okay, so yeah, everything exists eternally in that spiritual realm. At the same time, just like in the metaphor, we can say that the the sun globe is the source of the sun rays. So the sun rays emanate from the sun globe. Still, never was there a time when the sun globe existed without the sun rays. So we wouldn't say that like the sun rays are created by the sun, but they do emanate from the sun. And they both exist eternally in that metaphor. They both exist eternally. So similarly, whether it's spiritual energy, marginal energy, even material energy, because the material energy is also eternal. The forms it takes are temporary and illusory. So what all the energies of Krishna are always expanding. And at the same time, never was there a time when they did not exist. Just as the sun rays emanate from the sun. At the same time, there was never a time when the sun existed without the sun rays. That's an analogy that begins to maybe open a glimpse for me.
So then is it like, yeah, like, okay, materially speaking, as time goes on, let's say there's new sun rays that are coming out of the sun. At the same time, they always existed, let's say, within the sun. So it's something like this, like, even though the spiritual energy is expanding, all of it, infinity already always exists within Krishna. It's just sort of like, let's say, coming out.
Yeah, that's his pastime. Eko Pahusham is to expand unlimitedly. At the same time, never was there a time. Yeah, the expansive energies, Krishna is the source. At the same time, never did Krishna exist without his energies.
Hare Krishna, thank you. And then I don't know if you saw, Damayanti put some questions in the chat. Hare Krishna.
Okay, I'll look at the chat, and first I'll call on. Oh, thank you, Eze. Thanks for your discussion. Kim.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. I was hoping the class would go along this line again. I just had another question back to free will, and it's something else I think about. I feel like a lot of times, and I feel embarrassed when I say it, but sometimes I feel like, do I want God to exist? And that's why I believe it, And so different arguments come in to, do that, play with my mind that way. And one of my arguments is, if we're just, if we are part and parcel of Krishna, and we're exactly like Krishna in the material world, but minute sense, but all the same qualities, and we have free will, why do we know or feel so sure that Krishna wouldn't make a bad decision? Because we made a bad decision. But it seems like we rest so heavily on this belief that, okay, Krishna is in charge and he only makes perfect decisions. But why is it different than us making such probably a bad decision? I get confused by that. And I don't know if that sounds terrible, but it's just something that goes through my mind, you know? Has
Yeah.
that ever been brought up?
I appreciate where you go with your questions, Kim. Well, it's kind of like, well, that's how, yeah, we're not exactly the same, right? Yeah, we're similar, but we're not exactly the same. And so so that's a way that we're different, that just like, you know, the examples there. So just like Maya is an energy of Krishna that can overwhelm us, but Maya doesn't affect Krishna. Okay, we've given the analogy like a king will have the queen, and the queen influences the king. The queen is like the internal energy, the Lakshmi, it's Radharani. But then the king might have the maid servant, and the maid servant's also a servant of the king, but she's in the outer chambers. She doesn't really have access or influence to the king. So we're not exactly the same. So we're qualitatively, we have a lot of similarities, just like one drop of water is pretty much the same as the ocean. The percentage constituents in the drop of water is pretty much the same as the entire Pacific Ocean in one drop. But quantitatively is quite a difference. So the difference is like, okay, so like the cloud is the energy of the sun. The cloud exists because of the process of evaporation. The cloud's the energy of the sun. Now, from our perspective, it might look like, oh, the cloud's covering the sun. No sun today, okay? But that's just our tiny perspective. Actually, the cloud doesn't get in the way of the sun. The cloud doesn't influence the sun, but the cloud covers us. In fact, the cloud is created by the sun. So that whole mistake, cheating, energy, illusion, bewilderment, that all of that's because we're under the influence of the cloud of Maya. But that's a difference between us and Krishna, that Maya is a servant of Krishna, and Maya's our master when we're not taking shelter in the internal energy. So,
But in the material world, we have Maya, but not in the spiritual world before we came down. And yet we made a bad decision probably to come down to the material world. So that's kind of more what I was thinking.
I see.
We had all the, yeah.
You're talking about the original fall of the jiva. Okay.
Yeah.
That one.
Why can we do something so dumb? I mean, it seems like it was probably dumb. And yet Krishna, we are so confident wouldn't do something dumb, even though he's got free will and he's got all the qualities. So it seems like if we could do something that dumb, why is it he couldn't?
Well, my understanding where Prabhupada often goes with that question is, well, one point is, okay, I did something dumb. Let me get smart now. You know, I mean, that's just in a practical way. And then probably Papa goes like, well, that's the difference between the drop and the whole ocean. So we have free will, and Krishna has free will, and we're minute, and he's infinite. And so as minute, independence means you know, we have the capacity to choose foolishly, and some of us did, and some of us did. And okay, an explanation that for me is helpful a little bit. In the 9th canto, Prabhupada says that the falling living entities started as Lord Brahma. They started as a Brahma. Whether he means all living entities at all times, I don't know, but he definitely makes that statement. So it's just like a conception that, so we know like the Brahma of our universe is a pure devotee, is an avatar, a Shaktivesh avatar, if you're just following me here. And so maybe like, let's say serving Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, and then like, well, I want to continue to serve Krishna in the capacity of managing a whole universe like Brahma. And it's a service, it's like, it's not a fall down, okay? It's not a fall down. It's like, it's a Shaktivesh avatar. Okay, but then, perhaps then from the position of Brahma, then, and so maybe many Brahmas from there, they go back to Goloka Vrindavan. Bhagavatam makes it very clear. Not all Brahmas of all universe are pure devotees. So they're all devotees, but some are mixed with Gyan, some are mixed with fruitive activity. Then maybe from the position of Brahma, then one becomes a little bit attracted to the heavenly demigods, and then the fall begins. So that just like from that point of view, it's not necessarily that like one's in Vaikuntha or Goloka Vrindavan and one becomes a worm in stool or something like that. Okay, so like it could be a gradual thing like that. Anyhow, Prabhupada often emphasizes, he says that we have minute independence, and independence means that we can choose stupidly, and whatever the origin, whatever the source, just like Prabhupada also gives the example, if someone's drowning in the ocean, okay, well, we can argue. I think he's drowning because he ate a big meal and then he walked out from the shore and he got a stomach cramp and now he's drowning. And someone else can argue, no, I think he's drowning because he was on a ship and he fell overboard and now he's drowning. You can argue, but whatever, we're drowning. Let's get out of here. Prabhupada's giving us the lifeline. Okay, so there's that. And then that doesn't mean Prabhupada avoids the conversation of the fall, and he emphasizes that independence for the jiva soul means we have the capacity to choose foolishly. It's the essence of love. It's the essence of responsibility, as Gajendra Prabhu was emphasizing yesterday. Love means voluntary choice. So that's some of what I just shared, Kim, is just like clearly what I heard from Prabhupada. Other, I'm maybe conjecturing a bit, because there's that place in the 9th canto where Prabhupada said the living entities start when they fall. They start as Brahma. So then it's like, in one sense, to fall from spiritual world to Brahma, it's not really a fall. You're a Shakti Vaishyavatar, you're doing service. And maybe from the Brahma platform, one gets a little influenced. So those are some perspectives.
I'm sorry. Can I just, the thing that I'm more wondering, because I think all those explanations, including yesterday's on why we've gotten into this situation, help. But I don't, what still confuses me is why we are so sure that Krishna would never make the wrong decision or do something not so wonderful, because we were able to do something not so wonderful, and he's the same essence, way grander. So I sometimes think, like, why do we, like, is it my mind that wants to think that Krishna is all powerful and would never do anything bad or wrong or dangerous or anything? He's always going to protect me. But really, Krishna has free will and he could do anything. He could decide, I don't like this anymore. This is over. I mean, he could do anything. Why do we rest such confidence that nothing he ever does would be bad for us? That's the question that confuses me. Like, is it my mind wanting to believe that he would never do anything that would be ultimately bad for us? Or is that truth that somehow I can find? Or I guess, of course, I could realize it because people do, but I don't. So does that make more sense, the question?
Yeah, thanks for clarifying your question and the nature of your doubt. I appreciate your clarification. I think my understanding is kind of like you're correct. Like as long as I'm on the mental platform, then Krishna can do that. It could be like that. And my sense is that through realization that comes only from bhakti and from, let's call it, Krishna's self-revealing nature, that through bhakti, then Krishna's absolute goodness nature gets revealed to us. I mean, from the point of view of, let's just call it logic, philosophy, discussion. Well, is God all good? How do we know God's all good? Maybe God decides like, I'm just feeling nasty today. And we can go to different places. It's true. So my sense, Kim, is like, as long as we're on the mental or even intellectual platform, then those doubts, like they kind of have their place. And my sense is that they get resolved as we engage in bhakti. And then bhakti is sometimes called, it's a trans-phenomenal, trans-cognitive process where the soul gets realization of the infallible absolute goodness of Krishna. That's what comes to me.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there's somewhere in me that believes that and knows that, but I guess it seems so far away for me to get there to feel it, but that I lose confidence in it. But yeah, I feel that answer. Thank you very much.
I appreciate your philosophical questions, Ken. Dr. George.
Hare Krishna, Dhira. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I apologize, my signal has been coming in and out. Something in reference to Kim's question that came to my mind was reading in the Nectar of Devotion, how, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't read it in a while, but it was mentioned that the jiva, to the point of being similar to Krishna, but not, exactly like Krishna. In the Nectar of Devotion, I think it was mentioned that the jiva can only attain up to 78% of the quality of Krishna. And so in reference to Kim's question, and this is kind of like more humorous but I'm like, I can only get up to a C+, whereas Krishna's the A+, So I just wanted to share that perspective.
I appreciate that perspective. And first of all, I'm inspired that you're reading Nectar of Devotion and paying attention. Right, that's so good because, we commonly say qualitatively, because Prabhupada says qualitatively we're one with God, but quantitatively it's like the drop in the ocean. But that's just like, it's like an overarching general description. Prabhupada uses it because sometimes he doesn't want to get into nuance. But when we go into nuance, we're not qualitatively exactly the same. Only 78%, apart from the quantitative difference, even qualitatively, in this case, the drop 78% represents the chemical consistency of the whole ocean. And that's something that we don't hear about a lot. But if we go more subtly into what Prabhupada says, like you're doing, Bhakti Bridge, such an excellent point. And I like the 78%. That's about a C+. Thanks very much for that perspective. Wonderful. I see a chat from Damayanti. I'm going to read it. Let's see where we go with it. Okay. Hare Krishna, you said that Krishna is non-different from his clothing, flute, weapons, etc. What is the distinction between what is Krishna and what is not Krishna? Is he different from his expansions, that is the other living entities? Also, in the spiritual world, I have heard that everything is conscious. So is all of Krishna's paraphernalia conscious and separate living entities, or his paraphernalia is himself? What is the line drawn between Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattva? Okay, thank you. There's a lot there. In one sense, I would say the essence of my response, Damayanti, is the same as the essence of my response to Kim, that this Achintya Beta Beta Tattva, how is everything one and different from Krishna? Material energy, Jiva energy, Krishna's flute, Srimati Radharani, Lord Chaitanya. So as we do bhakti, we get more and more realization about this. As we do bhakti, we get more and more realization about realizing Krishna everywhere and realizing how everything's different from Krishna and one simultaneously. So the realization comes from bhakti. Still, intellectually, so we can go to a few places. So like the details about, Chintamani prakara sadmaso kalpa vriksha laksha viteshu surabhira bipalayantam lakshmi sahasra satasambhrama sevyamanam govindamadi pusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is yielding all desire, tending the cows in abodes built of spiritual gems. surrounded by millions of purpose trees and served with great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of Lakshmis or gopis. So Chintamani means spiritual. It means that each atom is a living entity. Each atom is a transcendental conscious entity. The atoms that make up the building, they're called Chintamani. Yes. So definitely everything in there is no dead metal or something. Okay. In the spiritual world, every atom is alive. That's definitely true. So that, and we get realization about it as we do more bhakti. The line drawn between Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattva, that's pretty clear. When we get into the tattvas, there are some subtleties, but basically that's pretty clear. I mean, sometimes we get into questions like different incarnations. Is it a Shaktivesh Jiva? Or is this a Yuga Avatar Vishnu Tattva, Lord Kapila Dev? But basically, the Jiva Tattva, that's called Vivinamsa, the Vishnu Tattva, that's called Svamsha expansion, Vishnu Tattva, Jiva Tattva, all expansions. And there's a place in Bhagavad Gita where Prabhupada says, your grandmother is Krishna, and your grandfather is Krishna, and you're Krishna. So, there's a truth to that. At the same time, it's like, my grandmother created the sky and the star and the sun. I didn't know. Okay, so there's also a sense that we're not. So Vishnu Tattva, Jiva Tattva, that's pretty clear. When we get into like Krishna's ornaments and earrings, is that just an expansion of Krishna's Svarup? Is that a separate personality? Then it gets like to an esoteric place where, as we get to know Krishna more, these things get revealed like that. At the same time, definitely all spiritual. There's no dead matter there. There's no dead atoms like that. It's like when Krishna appeared in the dungeon, in Kamsa's dungeon, to Devaki and Vasudeva. He was in the Vishnu form with his weapons, and it's like they are part of his Svarup, his eternal essential nature. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for hearing and participating in Bhagavatam discussion here on a Sunday morning. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you.